Hello, world, and welcome to the Crisis Victory Show. My name is Dr. Hal Bradley, and I will be your host today on the show. And I want to share with you uh, an amazing story. So the man that you'll be hearing from today, his name is Karl. Karl was kidnapped at the age of 14, taken into Mexico, and was sold off into the sex trade industry down there. And I want to caution my viewers today that due to the graphic nature of this guest interview, caution is advised because some of this content is not intended for a younger audience. That being said, Karl, good morning, and how are you doing, sir?
Uh, I'm okay, but I haven't slept in 3 days. Since you asked me to do this, my PTSD is really bad and I just couldn't sleep.
Well, I want to thank you first off for taking the time to do this show, and I totally understand about the PTSD syndromes when we're brought to remember past memories that we've worked so hard to bury so deeply in us. And are you okay? Are you all right now?
I'm as best as I could be.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the story that you're about to hear is extremely graphic. What this man has gone through, what this man survived, and how it is carried on throughout his life is the crux of the reasons why we're creating these shows in the first place. To show that people like Karl can go through an extreme crisis event and come out later in life on the other end and use that knowledge and survivorship in a humanitarian basis, such as Karl has done with me working with the homeless in our community. But we'll get into that later. Karl, I want to take the story and I'd like to start it, let's say, about a half a year before your captivity. Where were you at specifically at that time?
I grew up in a town called Linden, Washington. I was a social outcast because I was a half breed, was what they called me, and very racist. And about 6 months before I decided to run away from home, 6 kids in a pickup truck stopped while I was walking through town to my grandmother's, and they beat the holy hell out of me. Broke my couple of my ribs and my wrist, and I had to crawl on my hands and knees about a mile to my grandmother's house. And before that, the chief of police drove up and asked the kids, "What the hell are you guys doing?" "Oh, we're just beating the hell out of DiLorenzo to teach him he's not supposed to be in town after 9 a.m. at night." And so
Why were the
I,
kids why were the kids prejudiced against you, if you don't mind me asking? What was
uh,
going on?
I'm only half Dutch, and they used to call my mother a whore because she married an Italian from New York. So while I was in school, they always called me, uh, rough translation in Dutch is, see if I can say it correctly, my Dutch isn't as good as it used to be, would be Kinder scheißen kaufen Nielenhach or Wolf. In other
What is
words, half breed American kid.
interesting? So basically, what you're saying is the
So
community was a Dutch community.
yeah, it's a Dutch community, and my mother's Dutch, my father's Sicilian, so they didn't accept me at all. I
Okay, let
could
me.
never play sports with the kids or anything.
Is this what prompted you to leave the town and leave the area? Was this the reason that you fled to
Yeah,
California?
yeah, yeah. That's why I left.
Okay, let's get into this now. When you went to California, where did you go specifically, and how did you support yourself?
Well, at 14 and a half, I really couldn't go out and get a job, so I went to the local hardware store, bought a couple cans of paint and some stencils, and I walked around all the rich neighborhoods around Hollywood, Beverly Hills, and asked them if I could paint their address on the curb for a couple bucks. And I just told them I was working my way through school, and I was making money hand over fist, believe it or not. Some days I'd make up to $75. In 1971, 75 bucks was a lot of money.
Yes, it was. It was indeed. So let me ask you this, Carl. How did you meet the people who ended up abducting you and taking you into Mexico?
Well, right down from where the Brown Derby used to be was a coffee shop. And I'd go down there every day, have a coffee, just kick back, because it was like a little place where people would play their guitar and tell poems, and I felt comfortable there. And there was a couple that was always there. They'd buy me a coffee or a donut or a piece of pie, and so they befriended me. So I thought, oh, well, they must be really nice people, because no one ever treated me nice when I was a kid. So
So
I was pretty naive.
so they gained your trust right away.
Yeah.
Okay, can you take us from that point and how you ended up in Mexico?
Well, one day they said, well, tomorrow we're going to go to Tijuana. Would you like to go? And I said, sure. So they said, well, I'll just be here in the morning about 8 o'clock. So I was there, and we went to Tijuana.
What happened then?
We went to a cafe restaurant type place in Tijuana, and I ordered a cup of coffee, and I was drinking the coffee. It was a little bitter, but I never had Mexican coffee before, so I drank it and had another cup. And when I woke up, I was chained to a wall in a basement of some building.
Wow, that's incredible. Can you tell us? Can you describe the room, please?
Well, when you look straight ahead, there was a concrete wall with a door. On the ceiling, there was a single light bulb with a little string on it. And to the left of me was a window that was kind of ground level, because I could see light going through it, but all I could see was dirt. And about an inch above toward the top of the window, I could see light.
My
So I
God,
knew I was in a basement.
what was going through your mind at that time? My God, you must
Well,
have been scared to death.
I was scared shitless, and I was chained by my neck to a wall. I had about 7 inches I could move forward, and my arms were up above my shoulders, each chained to the wall by my wrists, and my ankles chained to the floor.
Could you hear any sounds? Is there anything that was going on in the basement that was alerting you to the crisis that you found yourself in?
I could hear sounds on the other end of a wall, and I really couldn't tell you what they were, but I heard screaming directly across from me. And upstairs, I could hear just moans and groans, and occasional holler and yell, and even a few gunshots. So I was scared. I pissed all over myself. I was totally naked, and I defecated right there on the floor.
My God, my God. Can you tell us, if you don't mind, the first contact with another person? Just exactly how did that unfold?
Well, the very first person to come in was some big, heavy-set Mexican guy, and he said in broken English, "Oh, you're a pretty boy." And then he left, and some woman came in and washed me. And they took a water hose and a bucket and a brush, and they just washed me with this brush. And that's about the very first human. I asked for some water or something to drink, and she gave me a cup of warm coffee with a straw. And that was the first thing I had. And it had to have been at least a day, because I watched the light go off and on in that little window.
Wow, incredible. Can you describe some of the other sounds that you started hearing at that time? As I understand, before the interview, we had discussed this, and you were telling me how they had other children imprisoned in other rooms down there. By this time, were you aware of that by now? Or?
Well, I knew there were voices there. It took me a while to figure out that somebody was having sex, because you could smell, even in that little 12 by 12 room I was in, that people were having sex. You can smell the BO, and I could hear the it had to be young girls' voices screaming no, no, no. And
Wow.
so I knew I was in deep trouble.
If you don't mind me asking this, when was your first encounter with somebody, and was it a man? Was it a woman? What happened to you, Karl?
They took me out of that room, and they took me to a room, and my Spanish ain't as good as it used to be, but I think what the man said it was, and I'll translate it, is I think it's Cela di on it's how they say assassinations. It's assassins. But in English it means the kill room.
Okay.
And so it was Cela di Asenios or Incencios, or my Spanish is terrible.
What did they do to you when they got you in that room, Karl? What happened?
Well,
Can you walk us through it?
Yeah, there was a chair that looked like a barber chair, but it was flat. And they just bent me over, tied my ankles to one end of this like table chair and my feet to the floor. And this guy just fucked me right in the ass. And he gave him a lot of money because he said, well, he's a virgin. And he ripped my poor asshole. It bled for 3 days.
Wow, I'm so sorry, Karl. I really am. Are you okay to carry on with this conversation? Are you
Sure.
okay?
Once I get committed to do something, I do it.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
It might get a little graphic. I hope you don't mind.
Well, this is what the show is all about, because our viewers need to hear these graphic conversations that men like us share for the purpose of helping in the future, maybe avoiding other people going through what you had to survive. So if you don't mind carrying on at this point, take us through the journey.
Well, after that, they chained me took me back to my room and chained me to the wall. And about a day later, this woman comes in. I haven't had nothing to eat or drink. She gave me some water in a straw, and she shaved my sideburns and my little mustache off, all my armpit hair, all my chest hair, all my crotch hair, and my legs. They tightened up the chain so my head was next to the wall. She put makeup on my eyes and lipstick. She put some fake bra on me and panties that had crotchless that tied on the side, because couldn't slip underwear on me and it looked like I was a guy with a bra. And then they took me back to that room and chained me to a wall. And I was just sitting there, and they didn't do anything to me, but this next part is going to make me cry. So
It's okay. Take your time, Karl.
and they brought this little 3 or 4 year old girl in and put her on that table, and across the table was a wall. I'd figured out later it was a two-way mirror wall. And so I could see the reflection. And this guy with a great big huge dick, it had to have been 12 inches long. They fucked that little girl to death. I was screaming at them to stop, but they wouldn't. They killed that little girl right in front of me. I could never get an erection again. Not for years. And
Wow.
so they killed that girl. The screams, I just can't get them out of my head most of the time. It's terrible. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Take your time, Carl. Take your time. This is why we're here today, to share this, to make people aware of just exactly what's going on, and most importantly, how much this has expanded in recent years. Uh, the child sex slave industry has grown exponentially. It's so large out there right now, and we notice and we find that so many cases that are similar to what you're describing are children that are abducted from Asia. They're abducted from Central and South America, and many of them are funneled through Mexico. And sad to say that so many of them do end up in the sex trade industry here in the United States. But most importantly, right now, again, I want to ask you, how are you doing? I know this is hard.
I'm all right. I'll tough it out. I always do.
Okay, let's take it to the next date. After the death of this young girl, I take it they removed you from the room, took you back to your room. Were you hearing other sounds at this time? Were there other people you could hear in the room?
When I was in my room, I could hear screams, holler, and just moaning and groaning. I knew people were having sex, but so did that answer what you wanted to hear?
How often were they?
The sounds went on 24 hours a day, just constantly, never stopping.
Were there other sounds? Did you hear anything from the outside that could give you an idea where you were at, that could help you locate where you were?
I could hear cars vaguely, people walking outside the window, and because it was dirt and gravel.
Were you able to holler out? Could you get attention from any of the people walking by?
I hollered, but nobody'd ever pay attention. I screamed until I almost lost my voice.
Okay. Did you get a chance to meet some of the other children at any time in your captivity?
Not really. I could see them when they'd leave my door open and they'd walk them into that one room. And I think the sadistic bastards would do that just so they could see what was to torture me. Because after I saw that little girl get killed, I refused to have sex. I didn't want to have sex anyway. And so they would torture me instead of, or bend me over that thing and let some guy just wring my ass.
Wow.
And so they'd chain me to the wall and they'd take like a soldering iron or a cigarette and burn holes in my legs. And so from my knees down on both of my legs, I might have 50, 60 little round burn marks that never go away.
I remember you showing those to me years ago. I remember that.
Yeah. One of the things I never did show you was on my left upper leg, I got about a 6-inch scar where, and I really have nothing against Russian people, but this guy, my dad was in the military, so I know what a KGB uniform looks like.
Yes.
And this big piece of shit took a knife and heated it up with a torch and cut my leg about 6 inches with the blade down like this. And it was red hot.
Why?
Because he was jacking off when he was doing it.
Okay.
And and they just let me bleed. And I must have bled for 20, 30 minutes until this lady who'd bring me water brought me a needle and thread for sewing buttons on. And that's why this scar looks so shitty, because I had to sew it up myself with no painkiller, no numbing. and it hurt so bad, but I had to do it to get it to stop bleeding.
Amazing. I mean, unbelievable. I'm so sorry that you were put through that, Karl. So what happened next? What went on after that incident with the Russian?
Well, they told me since I wouldn't willingly have sex that I was going to, they used the word in Spanish and I don't know how to say it, but they were just going to use me to be beaten and tortured. And so this one person came in once and they had a foot pedal like off a sewing machine because it looked like the one on my mom's sewing machine. And on the ends had 2 clamps. So they took an electric drill in my left ankle, drilled a hole into my ankle, and put in about 3.5-inch stainless steel screw. And they were laughing while they were doing it. And I was screaming and hollering. I don't know if you could visualize the pain that was, but I thought that was going to be over. But then they attached that little foot pedal on and they put one on the screw in my ankle and the other on my right testicle. And then they'd step on that pedal and just shock me until I passed out. I'd shit and piss and scream. And but they take me into that room where the windows are when they did that. So I know
they were
people
filming you.
watching. Yeah, I've been filmed hundreds of times screaming and hollering. And after I learned what that word was, it was in English, it was called the kill and torture room.
Jesus.
And so I just knew they was going to kill me one of the days, because after some of the Mexicans would speak in broken English, and sometimes I think they said it just to fucking scare the shit out of me.
Of course they did. It's intimidation, control, manipulation, maneuvering to put you into a different state of mind so you can suffer greater. I'm a former prisoner. I was captured on foreign soil. I get it. I know what it is to be tortured daily. I know what it is to have the will to survive torture. But and to the audience, I'd like to say that I have seen the scars. I have seen the damage that was done to this man. So I want you to take in context that this story is being told as graphic as possible so you can understand and get a picture of just exactly what goes on in the child sex slave business. The demented and perverted people that are into this kind of a thing, they like to have something that makes them feel a dominance and a control ethic within their own way of how they look at stuff like this. Are you okay to continue on?
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about how...
Let me tell you a little something else.
Please.
Go ahead.
No, please. I want to hear it. The floor is yours.
Oh. You notice how that when I walk, I limp all the time?
I do.
Almost every footstep hurts. One day, they took me into that room and chained me to that pedestal, sitting down with my legs out, and a guy took a baseball bat and beat the bottom of my feet till they were swollen up about the size of a football, each one of them. But they broke almost all my bones in my feet. And those creepy Go ahead.
Were they being paid to do this to you? Or were they paying somebody there
somebody would pay them to torture me. Some customer would come in, and that's how they got their jollies, because when he got done beating my feet, he was jacking off.
My God.
And then to continue, after my feet swelling went down, which took about 4 days, standing chained to a fucking wall, and I didn't get to sleep in a bed until about 6 months, and I was chained to that bed. And when I finally got to a bed, my chain down by my ankles and my wrists and my neck, they some guy come in and paid them so he could pull every one of my fucking toenails off with a pair of pliers. So
this captivity occurred when you were 14 and a half years old. You just said this is about 6 months into it. So now you're 15 years old, correct?
yeah.
Jesus, how are you surviving this? How are you handling it psychologically? How are you preparing for sounds
I-
that you would hear?
I talk to God in my mind every day. And I told him, just give me the willpower to make it through. And I hate to say this, but I told God if I ever find that guy that fucked that little girl to death, I was going to kill the son of a bitch with my own bare fucking hands. And when we get to when I left, it's going to be pretty graphic because I don't think I ever told you all that.
Well, I know that it's been hard for you to tell me any of it, Karl. To my audience, I want you to know that this is extremely brave of this man to share this testimony with you today. This wasn't just something that we started talking about in recent days. It's taken us about a year to prepare Karl for this interview. So, Karl, that being said, you're 6 months into it. What's going on right now in your life? What's going on down there in that room? What's going on down there with the type of people they're bringing to you? Can you explain it, please?
Since I willingly wouldn't have sex, they'd take me into the other room and they'd either torture me or bend me over and just brutalize my poor butthole. And whenever they had a little kid that they wanted to torture, they'd dress me up like they did before, chain me to a wall so I could watch. And I think they got off on me screaming and hollering at them to stop because that's all they did when they and I saw at least 5 little kids get fucked to death, buddy. I'm serious. Sick bastards.
Wow.
Couple
Wow.
boys and mostly little girls who were not even 5 years old. I can't get their screams out of my head. I've tried for years.
Take your time.
And so
Take your time.
I just
Let's move on from this point,
Yeah.
Karl. When they would take you to the room and you'd be walking down that hallway, what did you see? What did you notice? What describe that, please?
Well, when you go down the hallway, there were doors about every 10 feet, probably about 20 doors on each side. That was in the basement, and I was in a 3-story building. I found that out the day I escaped. So, and when you walk by those doors, you could hear screaming, moaning, people having sex, boys and girls. These were all children. There were no adults there.
So this was going on around the clock. This wasn't just a segment in time.
No, it was like they did it 24/7.
Did you ever see any of the people aside from those that were assaulting you? Did you have a chance to see other people, like when you were being taken to that room where they tortured you?
Only if their door was open, and I could see little girls that they'd be shooting full of drugs because they had marks on their arms, like, being needle marks. So they were shooting up little kids with drugs.
Wow. I can remember one time I was down in Sinaloa. This goes back about 30 years ago, and I was down there on some drug business. At that time, I was still a smuggler for the cartel. And I remember being up at this ranch house, and we were in this place where on the corridor of the house, there was a door open, and I remember looking in there from a distance and seeing all of these young people and seeing their faces and remembering that to this day and never forgetting it. And these kids, I found out later, were being trafficked north. They were taking to transporting them to the border. This was just a holdover site for them. And God, and just seeing their faces and knowing that where their life was heading to, and knowing there was nothing I could do about it at all. And hearing this, I can only hope and pray to God, the Father above us all, that those children didn't experience or go through what you did. But who knows? It's just the nature of that ugly world, that ugly business, and the perverts that finance it to keep it alive. That being said, I want to get back to your story. So you're in your room. You've come back after seeing another one of the children going through what you had witnessed. And this is the room that had the two-way mirror. So obviously they were filming all this stuff. You ever hear of the term snuff films?
Yeah, not till I was way older, because I didn't understand what was going on. I was just a dumb, big farm boy.
You were just a kid, Karl.
I just didn't know anything about what was going on. Only reason I know is I experienced it.
Okay, let's get a little bit further into this now. So you're 6 months into your captivity. What's going on within you now? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are your thoughts?
I just wanted to die. And it was daily someone would rape me. They'd take me into that room. Sometimes 10, 15 guys would just tear up my anus. They were paid to do it. These were customers who had paid to rape me.
Do you see their faces, Karl?
Only in the mirror I could see the side of their face, because I was bent over on my stomach with my hands to the end of the table, or this thing they made, and my feet were chained to the floor, so I couldn't look them directly in the eye. I only could see the side of their faces. And almost none of those people were Mexican. They were all from other countries.
Yeah, you said you'd made mention about one being a Russian. I kind of put that together. There is a market like that I'm aware of down in Mexico. Sad to say. Okay, let's carry this on. As you know, you're already over a half a year into this. Are you thinking about escape? Are you trying to plan a way out of this that you can execute and make it?
Well, every time they'd unchain me to the wall, they had two big, huge guys grab me. And they'd literally drag me to this other room, because I wouldn't go willingly. And they called me pretty boy. And they'd hit me everywhere except in the face. They'd break my ribs. And I said, if you ever leave me unchained, I am out of here so fast. And I don't know what isotomerics is. I learned the term later, but I'd sit there and flex my muscles against each other so I could keep my muscle strength. So
Interesting.
I know if I ever had the chance, it would only be seconds I had to react.
Yes. How long into this captivity were you before the opportunity came where you were able to escape?
I was there till I was almost 15 and a half.
So a year.
Yeah.
Boy, that's a long time.
It was like in June of 72, I got away.
Can you describe that, please? Your escape.
My escape? Okay. Well, they took me to that room, and after about 6 hours of being anally tortured raped by 6 different guys, one of the guards, we'll call them, left, and the other guy unchained me and unchained my ankles and my feet, and the neck chain was only like 12 foot long, and they just unhooked it from the floor to drag me. And guy dropped the chain, so I wrapped it around his neck and I choked that fucker to death. And then somebody was hollering, and a guy came in with a gun and he pointed it at me, and I just took it away. And it was give me a second here.
Sorry, take your time.
It was a Colt 45 1911. So I jacked it off and I shot that fucker right between the eyes because I took it away from him. Pure rage took over, buddy. I was shaking like a leaf. The adrenaline was hitting me. And about the time that gun went off, two guys came in running down the hall. One had a shotgun and the other one had a little square automatic pistol like a Uzi. I can't tell you if it was a Uzi or not, but I just hang on.
Go ahead.
I took that 45. I was laying down on my stomach, and when they got up close up, I shot them both right in right body, chest. Just shot them both. I took the shotgun and the Uzi, went upstairs, and I just start shooting all those fuckers. I killed every fucking one of them. And then I went into that one waiting room and I unloaded that automatic into all the guys that were there. They were people who worked there. They weren't customers. And then I opened all the doors in all 3 stories, let all the kids out. Some of those girls wouldn't leave because they were so high they couldn't. But there was about 37 of us who walked out the front door down the street, and I still had my chain on my neck, stark raving naked, and all these other kids were naked, and that's how I got away.
Wow.
So
I'm literally speechless at this point. I've been through some horrific stuff in my time, but nothing like this. Just amazing.
I never killed a human being in my life, but they wanted to kill me, and it was either them or me, and I wasn't gonna let them kill me.
Yes, of course. We call it fight or flight, Carl. Those of us that have training in our background understand the moment that adrenaline steps in, and all it's about is surviving.
Well,
that's when it gets real.
I knew how to use a gun. I just never shot a human before. But I don't know. You were in the military. You know how scared someone gets when they put a gun to their fucking head?
Yeah, well, I know that from my cartel years. Yes, I do know.
I literally pissed on myself when the first time they did that.
Okay, let's take it. You're outside of the building. You said there's 30-something children with you.
I got to rewrite this.
It's okay. You were explaining how you were naked. You still had a chain around your neck. Okay, you ready? What was it like? What were people doing? What were people doing when they saw all of these kids on the street like that? What was going on?
They didn't do a damn thing. They just looked. And I must have walked miles till the pavement went from dirt to asphalt. And there was a couple, a man and wife, from back east of the U.S. somewhere. I don't remember their names, but I was naked. And the lady gave me her little jacket to go around my waist. The man gave me his little jacket put around me just so I wasn't naked. And then I really didn't pay too much attention to the other kids because they just kind of disappeared into the woodwork. Okay. But me, the couple took me to their motel room, got me some clothes, and they took me to the border. And they told the U.S. Customs how they found me, and they just brought me back, gave me a bus ticket back to Los Angeles.
Well, surely you were interviewed by police. I mean, once you made the States in that type of condition, they didn't just sit you on a bus, Carl. They obviously took you in somewhere. They needed information. Can you tell us about that, please?
Well, I was talking to customs and someone from the FBI, and I just told them what happened. And I was there for hours, but they did give me something to eat and something to drink. And since I never committed a crime in the United States, they got me a bus ticket to Los Angeles. Well, you remember this night, the end of 1972, almost 1973. So that's what they did.
Interesting.
But
Did they offer you counseling? Did they offer you anything at all to help you psychologically once
yes,
they had heard your story?
they gave me an address of a counselor in Los Angeles, West LA. So I talked to her for about a month, and then I decided I was going to leave. So I started picking fruit in California and then all over the United States. That's what I did till I was 18 years old, was pick fruit.
Did you ever return to Linden? Did you ever go back where you were from?
Yes. Not till I was 19 years old. And I found out that through my friends, I was up in 100 Mile House, Canada, visiting some friends. And they told me that my mom and dad had quit drinking and my mom quit using drugs. So I stopped in the day after Christmas, 1974, I think it was.
Wow. Okay, as we get ready to wrap the show up today, Karl, I'd like you to tell people a little bit about where you're at today in life. One thing I will say, and I'd like to interject to the audience, is for the last few years, Karl has worked with me through Salvation Army, where we would pick up food. We would deliver food to the trap houses. We delivered to the camps. Karl was very instrumental in helping me with people that were suffering crisis events in their own right. And I tell you, Karl, I can't thank you enough for the help that you did give the people. I believe we even had some photographs that I'd given to our executive producer to show on the air with you working with me in that industry. Is there any advice that you can give to people in the audience that have heard this story at this time? Anything you'd like to share that can maybe help prevent other children from getting into these situations?
Well, tell your mom and dad if anybody really is trying to be friendly, because that's a danger. Strangers aren't usually so friendly. They're nice and giving gifts. And the thing is, there's a lot of things that these evil people do to follow people from grocery stores and stuff just to see where these kids are at.
So what you're saying then is if you see something, say something.
That's
correct?
Right.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you're smarter than me.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that, but I have survived things. I get it. Well, Karl, I can't thank you enough for sharing this story today. May this story benefit other people that are able to hear this. For those of you that think this is an unbelievable story, I'm here to tell you now that I've known Karl for a number of years. I've seen the scars on his body. I've been personally involved in the counseling of his PTSD issues. I believe this to be a true story. We're going back to 1972 when things were certainly a lot different down in Tijuana. At that particular time, I was serving in the U.S. Army overseas, but when I got back in 74, I had a friend that lived in Tijuana, so I was down in that zone. And yes, it was a very dangerous time, a very dangerous place to be in. And the corruption in the police departments was probably at its greatest height during that time. That was the foregrounding era of the beginning of the construction of the actual drug cartels. They were no longer families. They were becoming syndicated and organized at that time. Human trafficking is an epidemic in our world right now that we live in daily. There's information that's out there showing the exponential growth of what's going on with children that are being marketed. And again, I can't reiterate enough to the audience that if you see something, share that information immediately. You may be saving a life on the spot. You may be preventing somebody else from going through and experiencing what Karl has shared with you today. And that being said, if you enjoyed the show today, if you like these type of interviews, then please hit like, share, and go to my website and leave a comment. Karl, I want to thank you. God bless you today, and God bless you always. And I'm so glad that you survived through it. I can't thank you enough for sharing this amazing story. And I see you almost every day now. You're one of the tenants in our rental properties. So you just hang in there, sir. And if there's anything I can ever do to help you in any way at all, outside of being your landlord and an associate, don't hesitate to come to me as you have in the past. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the Crisis Victory segment for today. I want to thank you for witnessing this show and hearing Karl's story. And again, if you see something, say something. That being said, as I close out today, and as I always do in my shows, go Victors. Adios y vaya con Dios.
Ciao.
Ciao. Take care, Karl. Thank you.